Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank all four of our witnesses on this panel. You're all enormously talented people and have all used your God-given talents in such wonderful ways on behalf of our country. And Pastor Stewart, am also a Lutheran, although of the Missouri Synod variety, and so, I deeply appreciate your remarks as well. I would like to address most of my comments to Commissioner Joel Bousman, who is from my great state of Wyoming. And Commissioner Bousman, I first of all want to welcome you and thank you for coming all this way to testify about this legislation. I deeply appreciate your being here. You and I share a constituency there in Sublette County, and I know that a number of our co-constituencies there have been very vocal about the impact on public lands in their area, and this bill in particular. What has their general impression been regarding this legislation?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, Representative Lummis. As an example of the feeling in our local community, the people, when they heard about this legislation, organized a community meeting about 5-6 days ago. Our biggest room in our county is the auditorium in the school at the Pinedale High School. And they had the meeting there, and they had standing room only for a small populated community. There was estimated between 500 and 600 people jammed into an auditorium that had a capacity of about 350 people. I guess in order to answer your question, the organizer of the event asked for a show of hands of people that were in favor of this legislation, and there were 0 hands went up. That is how angry and how scared the people are in our community. One of my citizens in my county, for example, voiced the opinion, and they own property that would become an inholding within the wilderness if this legislation passed. And this person expressed a concern about if this became wilderness, there's no language in the document that assured them that they would still be able to drive to their property. And she expressed a concern that she is a lover of wilderness, by the way. We have lots and lots of wilderness in our county, and we like that portion of the wilderness, but we don't want it all wilderness. But she expressed the concern that if she could no longer drive to her house, she would have to park her vehicle and walk the 2 miles from the wilderness boundary to get to her home. And she said she thought she could probably do that most of the time, but what really concerned her was the fact that we have right next to the road going into her house and on the forest, which would become wilderness, a tremendous problem with the pine bark beetle, and there's dead trees right down to the private property line that would be on the wilderness. And she expressed a concern that what really scares her is the fact that we could no longer get access with fire trucks to put the fire out if we had one. That's just a small example of how concerned people are.
And may I ask, are there a lot of places where private land and public land abut each other, where perhaps the private land would be used to access fires and add additional burdens on private land?
There's no question that this would add a burden to those particular areas where private land, in case of a fire, would serve as a staging point, as long as the folks that own the land would give the Forest Service permission to do that, which I have done in the past, by the way. But at any rate, yes, it would present a problem, and in many cases the existing access to homes that would be either on the edge of this new so-called wilderness or incorporated, the roads go across wilderness to get to the private land. And another example where Fremont Lake, anybody that's been to Wyoming and Sublette County has heard of Fremont Lake. It's the biggest lake in Wyoming, one of the biggest lakes, free natural bodies of water in the United States. tremendous value economically for boating, water skiing, all sorts of motorized water activities. That lake would be 100% on the wilderness according to the maps provided with this legislation. I had a friend that's an outfitter and a very a Democrat, not a Republican, liberal friend of mine that takes people out on the lake on fishing trips. And he came to me and said, we can't live with this. It would put me out of business. And I commented to him, I guess you'll have to throw your boat motor overboard and use the oars, because that's what wilderness law requires.
I'm out of time, but I would like to hand some of my questions to my colleague from Utah for perhaps consideration as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And thank you all panelists. It was, I thought, very well presented arguments on all your behalfs.
Ms. Capps? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this panel. And I just have to salute this panel, having waited